Okay, hi everybody, how are you? Good, yes, thanks. I'm so happy to see so many people here. The last slot at the festival and a beautiful, beautiful day outside, and you're all here, so thank you so much. I've had an amazing time at this festival, just wonderful people, and I really want to thank Megan and Terry and Anne and Hazel and all the volunteers who helped put this together. It's been fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a poem that I wrote for an anthology, which actually was the first anthology of Black Canadian poetry in the country that came out last year, which is a little bit too late to me. But anyways, we'll start off with that. And I was looking at my own version of spoken word and trying to think of what is the historical lineage, because a lot of us in spoken word kind of feel like we're reinventing the wheel every time we do what we do. And I realized that what I'm doing is coming out of a long lineage of poetics. So I wrote this piece to pay homage to it. It's called A Brief History of Soul Speak. Seemingly innocent spirituals, to both master and overseer, they were merely words, simple lyrics, ingenuous hallelujah ballads. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. But these words were charms, incantations chanted in secret freedom code, surreptitious melodies sung by restless slaves. Chariot became train, became a rumbling underground, echoing over plantation field of cotton, tobacco, and cane. Gospels for safety, for shouts, never mind, battle cries. We'd leave a brother dead cold in a heartbeat. Mothers with babies strapped to their bent-to-near snap backs sung under the unrelenting sun of the Old South, and men with bodies worked hard, then raw till they were little more than meat and bone, recounted these so-called silly spirituals to both each other and God. God, they asked for strength. Each other, they asked for directions. Where to cross over that river and where to board that subterranean northbound train to freedom. Then came the blues, belting out anguish over injustice after emancipation failed to deliver the promised land, instead sending Klansmen who strung up till lifeless one brother after another as law enforcers turned away and crosses burned till dawn. Dallas blues, Memphis blues. I ain't had nothing but bad news, crazy blues. Unabashed, these words laid claim to the pain of generations. Love was sought, found, and gone, gone, gone. Ye shall overcome if ye faint not. Our struggle will not be undone. And so the young entered at their peril the guarded gates of academia, living the vision of Booker T. Washington, where scholarly success meant abandoning one's own language, meant adopting the mother tongue of Uncle Tom. When a hunger for our own vernacular mingled with a passion of romanticism, a new language was born, on the page, on the stages of smoky coffee houses, deep in the heart of Harlem. In this Renaissance, we began to reclaim ourselves, began to own our newly found freedom to simply read and write en masse in public, to make love and meaning of our suffering, to live out loud, word by word, on our own terms. Langston left a language deep as the Euphrates that flowed into the ocean of Gwendolyn, bestowing permission for preachment, as Baraka and Sanchez reloaded the canon with unapologetic verse fueled by didacticism. And up here beyond the 49th parallel, Clifton Joseph and Lillian Allen waged a rub-a-dub revolution. While George Eliot Clark taught us the maritime equation of Black plus Acadia equals Africadian, and Wade Compton mapped the path of BC bluesprint. While across the country, slam and hip-hop brought rhythm and poetry back to the streets, and ghetto speak became fodder for heightened verbal artistry. These are our ancestors of verse. This is our legacy. And still this history is incomplete. So diverse is the lineage, unsung are so many, who first spoke the words that birth the language of soul speak. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so next poem I'm going to do, I wrote, this is going back a bit now, I wrote it in the mid-'80s when I realized that the earth was going to shit. And yeah, that was a rude awakening. So I decided to write a poem about it, and it relates sort of to, there's a poem I'm going to do later that's sort of like the after of my perspective on this. So this is the before. And this is called The World Began with a Whisper. Once upon a time ago, back 13.6 billion years, so we're told, the universe gave birth. Out of gas and dust and cosmic cloud, this chaos created Gaia divine, a goddess we call Earth. Now, before I start to going, let me start by telling you that this is not a poem about the saving of the planet. For since the Earth's creation, there's been at least 4 mass extinctions, complete annihilations of all living populations, until our atmosphere was altered through the flux of evolution, through single-celled mutation and organic procreation and ecosystem synchronization and symbiotic combination. Like a phoenix, the Garden of Eden resurrects in tune with her seasons, only recently becoming ripe for varied forms of earthly life and human habitation. So simply put, the point of this poem is that the earth was alive before she was home. The universe is hostile, and our dependence on the planet, infantile. There's only 12 thin miles between us and bombardment by galactic debris, harmful radiation, and the icy cold hands of infinite space. This planet, our mother, encompasses you, our biosphere, our home, her womb. And if it weren't for photosynthesis, our brains could not consider this. This isn't a poem, it's just a thought, like matter, only less static. Could it be possibly that we are one and the same thing, as Earth is life, as Earth, and that we have been sleeping? Like the Buddha before his becoming, or like Christ before his awakening, or like when we believed the earth was flat. And up until that smarty pants Copernicus shook it up in the 16th century, the very idea of a solar-centric system was considered crazy blasphemy. So I'm thinking perhaps we've made a grave underestimation of this entire situation. And with dozens of microscopic creatures who now call home to you, can you say for sure that it was nothing when Horton heard a whoo? But this poem or non-poem does not propose that with Gaia as our gracious host, we are planetary parasites with Earth our hearth and domicile. Instead, it just stands, hands gesturing wildly in a street corner sort of sermon. It doesn't know if it'll be believed, but it continues its oration, saying, the living earth is a single system, a biodiversified creation, and each of us stems from a single seed connected despite species transmutation. So rather than just freeloaders, perhaps we're planetary creations. And James Lovelock told the world of this in a paper he called the Gaia Hypothesis. And I'm thinking perhaps Blake, Rumi, Cummings, Krishnamurti, among the many poets and mystics who really seemed to get it, knew of our relation, our situation, and knew the source of all divine and their place as a piece of the planetary pie. That is, if this was a poem to begin with, which it isn't. It's just a thought. Nothing but thought. A versified voodoo creation from the core of the central nervous system of the witch is dead, come home. Of perhaps we're all just the same thing. Of synaptic communication, of spiritual communion, of if the universe is expanding, doesn't that mean that we were all one when it began its beginning? Of, no, it can't be, it makes me dizzy. Of, how long can you hold out? Of, I'm a poet, I'm not a planet. Of, this is ridiculous, I'm going home. Of, there's more to heaven and earth, dear Horatio. Of, but T.S. called us the hollow men. Of, not with a bang. Of, this is a test. This is simply a test. All thinking taking place is being simulated for test purposes. Of, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. Of, life is but a dream. This is the way the world begins, the world begins, the world begins. This is the way the world begins. Not with a bang, but a wide open mind. In the whisper of the words, meditate, deliberate, consider. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm very excited to see all the sisters in the house today. Hey, sisters. All right, because I have an estrogen sort of fueled section of the set that we're about to enter into now. So this is a poem. It was just recently published in York University's Women's Studies Department Journal, and it's called Revival. And yeah, okay, so I wrote this, I have a lot of spirituality in my poems, and then I go into high schools, and the kids are like, Miss, so, like, are you, like, a Christian, or are you, like, do you believe in, like, God, or are you a Buddhist, or what's going on, Miss? So, so I wrote this poem, which I read to them, and they still don't have a proper answer, so. But this is what happens when you're raised by an atheist and agnostic. It's like your teenage rebellion becoming spiritual. So this is called Revival. Driven by persistent pagan roots burrowing below both Celtic and African streams, my praise needs to dig deep, bring the scriptures down to earth. As a girl, instead of church or formal spiritual instruction, I was given free run. Told, your people are Christian, but when you're old enough, you can follow any tradition. So I tried them all on. Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, but never could find a single tribe to which I felt that I belonged. Instead, dug deep to the source of the stream that feeds the local watering hole with universal energy. Oya becomes Kali, Venus, Aphrodite, Inanna becomes Persephone, Isis becomes Mary. An eclectic array of deities simmering like spices in the cauldron of my psyche. During the summer of that smash hit romantic comedy, I keep finding myself repeating the words of the title, even though I never did see the movie. There's something about Mary. There's something about Mary when she finds me in the most unsuspecting places. Outside churches, yes, of course, but also down the street in front of that Portuguese lady's house, you know, the one who owns the corner store? There's something about the way she stops me as I walk past that hospital named after her husband. That's St. Joseph, Toronto. Her husband, that sacred gardener saint who tended her devotion. Something about the way I am called into her courtyard full of hopeful offerings to stand perplexed before the plexiglass of her concrete chapel, lingering with mingling blessings and prayers still dangling midair. There's something about Mary when she finds me in the most unsuspecting places. Amazing the way I am wakened when I tune into her graces. Quintessential female artist, Western spiritual delegate, became vessel without protest, maternal anima incarnate. Beneath blue veil and bared palms, a pantheon of goddesses. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the estrogen set. And something that I love about spoken word is it often gets into taboo subjects. So this poem is about one of the stupidest taboos that I've ever heard of around female biology. I really don't understand why well anyways, this is what the poem is about. So it goes like this. Blood. That's it. No, there's more, okay, there's more. Okay. Oh, yes, like, okay, yeah, there's more. Yeah, okay. Take two. Blood is a red word, misunderstood. In a world where frustration is favored over understanding and elation, where often the only path to exaltation comes from patiently painting our passions pastel and pleading for permission to rise above repression. Whitewashed by the big brother bully, the bull-faced lie, our eyes cast down in shades of unseen sadness, as the Kodachrome of our enormity is crushed into a pigment of pale congeniality. At 6, I tried to understand this concept of menstruation, but in my mind found no relation between these scenes of soaring doves and young blonde maidens wearing white and feeling free to run, swim, ride, and ski. Between these and later visions of women who, through some secret mystery, excrete an oddly hued blue liquid on maxi pads on my TV. Later, my adolescent transformation began in the compromising position of my waking mid-slumber, stumbling into bathroom for a midnight pee. Blood was swirling in the bowl. Although by this time I'd been bold enough to read that "You Are a Woman Now" books discreetly left upon the bed without a word of wisdom said. So I sat for a moment and in my mind imagined a tiny far-off village where upon the initiation of my menstruation I would be taken in by older women who would explain that the blood in my veins was not the same as the blood of creation, who would prepare a feast in celebration of new life. But instead I sat alone that night, though knowing the location of the feminine protection placed behind the Mr. Muscle by the fairy of menstruation. Thanks for that. So I followed the instructions from the pamphlet in the box in a kind of calm confusion, wondering why nobody talks about blood out loud. Why nobody talks about blood out loud, because it's nasty and it's dirty, unless brought about by violence or some other form of misery. And why this fetus food beneath me is a form of blasphemy. When as women we are Shakti, and we can shake the stale sterility. Creation lies within our womb, and it's fear that's infertility. We are the fuchsia of Athena, sprung fully formed and warrior wild. We are violet deep as Demeter, distressed without her child. We are the grass-green greatness of Gaia, Mother Earth. We are the thunderclap of Kali, black destruction, death, and rebirth. We are the regal red of Isis, reaching immortality. Our spectrum stretched beyond the hues of virgin white and pale blue Mary. As women, we are Shakti. We are fire and creativity. We are passion, birth, and action. And our blood is red, red, red. Life, energy. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so thanks, fellas, for coming with us on our Estrofest of a poetry set. I got one more, and I wanted to put a shout out to all of the fellas. There's a lot of guys who are doing a lot of work around equality, which helps everyone. So let's give some love to the fellas who are supporting the movement towards, equality, humanitarian. All right, so this is a poem. I'm going to share with you when I got schooled a little bit about the way that I speak. And it was very interesting for me. And I found reading this poem, a lot of women can relate. So we'll see if this connects to anybody else here. And it's called Two-Spirit People. She said, "This may be crossing the line." And because I like her, I say, "Fine, cross away." And so she does. Digs right in and says, sometimes when you talk, you offer a disclaimer first. You begin an apparently declarative statement with, "Well, I could be wrong here," or "I'm not really sure." And when you do that, sister, you give away your power. She says she knows because she's a tranny. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I understood the term fully. All I know is that even though she looked like a boy, she didn't get mad when I called her she. "I know what it's like," he tells me, "to cut yourself down before you've sprung up from a seed. You see, that's why they'd call us in, people like me." In an ancient native tradition, whenever there was a dispute in the village between the men and the women, they'd call one of us two-spirit people in to negotiate a resolution. And so we'd go over to this side of the river where the men were and listen. And then we'd go over to the other side of the river where the women were and And then we tell them what we thought, because they asked us, and because we know how to be both. And so I can tell you, men, don't do that. They don't put themselves down before they open up their mouths. You see, most men speak without apology, and they respect their own opinion enough to present it with authority. But women, a lot of women, say, "Sorry," say, "I don't really know, but," and then offer priceless wisdom up. They drop a gem with the power to heal the world with a preface that establishes their words don't really matter. Or worse, hold that gem under their tongue, cold as stone, never to be heard. "Don't do it," he said. "Don't apologize and cower. If you've got something to say, stand up straight and speak your mind from your heart, from your soul. Let your words hold your power." Thank you. Okay, thank you. So I've got one more that I want to share with you, and this is the one that relates back to the one about the environmental disaster. Priscilla's like, "Yes, I remember. Thank you." I wrote this it's very fresh. I wrote it really recently, and it reflects on a couple of things. One thing was when I was trying to bring musicality into my work, I thought it would be really cool if I was hip hop, because all the cool kids seem to be hip hop. So I tried to do that. And instead, Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday started coming out of my mouth. And I realized that this was in my bones from my grandfather, my Scottish grandfather, white Scottish grandfather, playing all of this old jazz music when I was a kid. So this is an ode to that. And also, it's an ode to hope, really. Just noticing in the last little while, changes happening where this despair and sense of futility in taking on the problems of the world has somehow shifted. And it's something that I'm seeing in all of the Occupy movements happening. Especially, my favorite of all of those is Occupy Love. I think that's a great idea. Like, if we just do that, we're done, right? That's it. So, yeah. Okay, so this is called Wonderful World. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. They've invented a bath mat made of moss that lives off of post-shower water drops. They're planting a forest of food in Seattle, a jungle of tomatoes and carrots and apples. They've built bus benches into swings in Montreal that play music to the rhythm of your rise and fall. And in Milan, they're erecting an apartment building covered with shrubs and vines and trees, a high-rise complex of vertical foliage. It's going to have the same ecological impact as 10,000 square meters of forest. These are not miracles. They are simply good ideas. They are simple, obvious in hindsight. Why didn't we think of it? I'll tell you why. Because we've been trained into passivity, led to believe we were powerless. We became victims of learned helplessness, swallowed the illusion in an ostrich palooza of head in the sand because it's too sad to look and I can't do anything anyways. Apathy. We agree. Clicking away our freedom on a regular basis, perhaps posting inconsequential statements on Facebook in half-hearted attempts at post-9/11 autonomy, but really, who are we fooling? How many terms and conditions, how much fine print have I drowned in while swimming the internet? At one point, I admit, I just gave up, waved the white flag and said, for God's sakes, iTunes, just give me the Black Eyed Peas' latest release. I'll sign anything. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed days and dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Maybe it's a simple matter of alchemy that's turned our apathy into ingenuity. All I know is that suddenly we've begun to arise from our slumbering, the word possibility teasing our lips like raspberry. We're beginning to turn our backs on, you can't, and this is the way it is. We are opening up, blossoming. Like the awkward adolescence of humanity that we are all saying, why not? Let's just give it a shot. All of us, all at once. Our shaky hands on the door, we are starting to push, to believe in our own strength, giggling like schoolgirls each time we find it unlocked. They've invented a bath mat made of moss. In Seattle, they're planting an orchard of free food. They've built bus benches into swings in Montreal, and in Milan, they're erecting a vertical jungle. And while government wars rage on, every day people around the world are surrendering their hatred and venom, the lure of a peaceful heart suddenly too seductive to ignore. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. These are not miracles. They are simply good ideas. They're simple, obvious in hindsight. Why didn't we think of it? I'll tell you why. Because it wasn't time then. We needed to stand stupid and hopeless in darkness and be humbled, grateful. When we finally began to see the hallelujah, thank you, Louie. Yeah, you were right. The world is a big blue wonder where anything is possible. As we begin to grow into our power, as we begin to grow up, everywhere, all at once, and we have only just begun. I see babies cry, I watch them grow, they'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you.